This is All India Radio. Please stand by for our next program.
This is All India Radio. You will now hear comments from the press. The Hindustan Times in its editorial titled PM Modi Scores in Houston says Prime Minister Narendra Modi's joint appearance with United States US President Donald Trump at a rally in Houston is a significant moment in India-US ties which will arrest the perception of drift in the relationship and provide the right political signal to move on thorny issues. It will also help boost Mr. Modi's credentials, both internationally and domestically, enhance New Delhi's diplomatic capital at a crucial time in geopolitics, and go some way in addressing concerns about the direction India is headed, both politically and economically. But New Delhi decided that, notwithstanding differences, it was important to keep an eye on the big picture. The big picture was the need to preserve and deepen ties with an ally whose support is critical for India to meet its strategic and economic aspirations. Mr. Modi and his team banked on a well-thought-out strategy, leveraged the power of the diaspora, appease Mr. Trump while firmly reiterating India's own interests. By speaking of India's democracy and its diversity, Mr. Modi showcased the common values with the US by defending his moves in Kashmir, linking it to terrorism, and espousing a partnership with Mr. Trump on counter-terror. Mr. Modi sought to neutralize Pakistan. By speaking of India's demography, aspirational citizens and its economic potential, he sought to win over foreign capital. Put it all together, and it is clear that India has achieved its aim in Houston. The Times of India, in its editorial titled Diplomatic Coup, writes, right from the beginning of his prime ministership to 2014, Modi has made concerted efforts to reach out to the Indian community abroad. Those efforts paid rich dividends this Sunday when Modi's address to the Indian American community in Houston turned out to be a mega event with President Donald Trump and 24 American lawmakers cutting across party lines and therefore exemplifying bipartisan support for India attending. It also comes at a time when Pakistan has been trying hard to drum up international support to counter India's move to abrogate special status for Jammu and Kashmir. But the Modi-Trump bonhomie in Houston showed that Washington is firmly in India's corner, even if some signals eventually emanate about easing restrictions in Kashmir, which New Delhi should in any case. This was reinforced when Trump asserted the need to protect civilians from radical Islamist terrorism, and Modi called out Pakistan by alluding to the fact that the planners of both the 9/11 and 26/11 terror attacks were hosted in that country. However, to take full advantage of strategic complementarities between India and the US, things must improve on the trade front. The Trump administration's obsession with trade deficits is a big roadblock in India-US ties. Therefore, it is hoped that the momentum from the Howdy Modi event will translate into a meaningful trade deal. Overall, the two countries must come together to balance the rise of a techno-totalitarian state such as China. Upholding a global liberal and rules-based order, therefore, necessarily requires strong strategic cooperation between the world's richest and largest democracy. The Hindu, in its editorial titled Texan Outreach, says the Houston gathering of the Indian diaspora in the US on Sunday, addressed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump, was a resounding success in meeting its objectives. Mr. Modi presented the ending of autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir to the cheering crowd as a significant achievement of this government. The rally galvanized the diaspora in support for Mr. Modi's politics in India and enticed Mr. Trump. The Hindustan Times, in its editorial titled Higher Education, writes, the All India Survey of Higher Education 2018-19 showcases key positive developments in the sector. The gross enrollment ratio, which is the ratio of students aged 18 to 23 who have enrolled in higher education to the total eligible population in the group, has increased from 24.3% in 2014-15 to 26.3% in 2018-19. Female enrollment has improved from 47.6% in 2017-18 to 48.6% in 2018-19. But the report also highlights two major challenges. One, the higher education infrastructure is skewed in favor of less than 10% of the districts, which have over 30% of all colleges in the country. The second worrying aspect is representation of disadvantaged classes in higher education. The lack of access to education, either due to lack of an institution near home or socio-economic hurdles or discrimination, is holding back many young people from realizing their full potential. Those were the comments from the press presented to you by the News Services Division of All India Radio.
This broadcast came to you from the Delhi station.